Welcome to another episode of Design Meetup powered by IxDF Kerala and co-sponsored by Xprion Technologies. Brand archetypes determine your brand's identity or personality, the visual design language, the tone of UX writing, and entire experience. Doing this on the onset of UX is important, which help to save up cost on redesigning the experience as well as rebranding, especially to avoid inconsistencies in design. Our speaker, Vandana Raghavan, a UX designer, will be taking us through the topic, What's Your Brand Archetype? To talk about the speaker today, she has a work experience of over 8 years and comes from a non-design background. While working in a mortgage, she decided to take a break and pursue a creative career. She restarted her career as a UX designer. She is from Thrissur, the cultural capital of Kerala. He loves to doodle in her sketchbook. She loves enjoying sketching people from life, experiences, and her imagination. Vandana is also an active Toastmaster, and her favorite quote is, if you hear a voice within you, you say you cannot paint, and then by all means, paint and that voice will be silenced. It's a quote by Vincent Van. For ease of better experience, we have muted the audience mic during the session. Please put in your questions in the chat window, although we'll be having exclusive Q&A session after the webinar, where the audience can interact and discuss. So for those of you just joining us, welcome to What's Your Brand Archetype by Vandana Raghavan. Over to you, Vandana.
Thank you so much, Prinju. So it feels a little funny because I'm always usually on the other side, probably sometimes hosting and maybe volunteering for IxDF. So it's really exciting for me to actually be here talking to the audience finally on a topic that I feel very strongly about. Now, why did I really choose to talk about brand archetypes? So when I first learned about brand archetypes, I was fascinated by the topic. But when I started working, I started talking to designers that I knew, at work and otherwise, because I was part of a lot of discussions online. At some point there was Clubhouse. So we had a Figma community there, which is based in the US. So I started talking to designers, specifically UX designers, and I would ask them, what's your take on brand archetype? How important is it to set the brand archetype when you start UX? Many of them actually were not very familiar with the concept, and there were the other few who were not convinced why it was as important as I thought it was. So what happened is, I realized that it was mostly visual designers or graphic designers or UI designers who knew a little more about the topic, and they definitely applied it, but it was really not a starting point for anyone starting off in user experience for a project. So that made me think about why we should be talking about it today. So moving on to the presentation. What exactly is a brand archetype? Now, I have a boring definition right there on the slide, and you can see the color wheel, which is more interesting to look at. So it's probably understood as a character type or a personality type that your brand can embody. What does brand really mean? So basically, brand, people think that it's a logo, it's the name of the company. No, but it's all of that. It's also an intangible concept of the business that people, that is your audience, can identify with you as a company, as a product, or even as a person. So now that you know what brand is, let's understand what does archetype mean. So archetype is a model from which you can derive, or something is made out of it. And it comes from the Greek word archetypos, which is archetypal. So when you think about it, brand, which is an intangible business concept, and archetype is the model. So it's a set of models or set of brand personalities from which you can decide for your company, for your mobile application or your online, any platform, what exactly is the archetype for your brand. Now, why are we talking about this today? So we had this Swiss psychiatrist and a psychoanalyst way back in 1919. Okay, yeah, that's really long back. So we had Carl Jung. Yes, it's pronounced as, it's written as Jung, but it's pronounced as Carl Jung. So what he did is he traveled all around the world and he was talking to people. He listened to stories around the world. He understood or tried to learn about the different cultures. What he noticed about all these stories around the world was every story had a set of characters, and most stories had, the same set of characters or similar set of personalities that kept reappearing in every story. So all these characters had a dominant unique trait or a character type, a certain kind of way they would behave, certain type of wants, desires, value systems, what motivated them. So archetypes basically represent these universal patterns and images that are part of a collective unconscious. So it's more like, what are these stories, what are these patterns that are passed on from one generation to another, and these set the kind of personality types. So he arrived at 12 archetypes. Now, here we've not added the word brand yet, okay? But then what happened is this became so useful in terms of applying, in terms of, when you're getting into marketing, when you're defining your company, brand. So that's when the archetypes just got molded into brand archetypes. Why is it really important for us, some of us UX designers, some of us aspiring UX or UI designers, front end developers, everyone working towards building something together, right? So, why is it important for us to understand? So, when you take or when you're working on an application, people want to see that application, they want to connect with it as a person. They don't want to see it as as a non-living being, right? So brands now, it has become important to demonstrate a sense of responsibility, a sense of a being, like this is what we believe in, these are our value systems, and we will be responsible, and this is how we will behave. So this kind of gives a more holistic and more humanizing, the approach to doing business. So you may be listening to me, you may have your phone here, you may be swiping, you may have another browser open, you may have another television in the background, or you may be actually looking at something else. So all of us now have very low attention span, right? So how do we get our users to connect with your application? How do you get them to come back and use your application again and again? So the chances are, if your user identifies with you as a personality that they like, they're more likely to be hooked. Hooked, yes, that's also a word that's considered negative, but they're more likely to recall your brand. They're more likely to have brand loyalty towards your application. Now, jumping right into the 12 brand archetypes. Now, what is this big wheel that we have? So, Carl Jung defined 12 main archetypes. Okay, so we're going to start with these 12 archetypes. It does not mean that these are the only brand archetypes that are there. There's a lot more, and that's definitely for all of you to go back and read up and know more about. But this wheel, basically, if you notice, there are 4 quadrants, right? You have on the left, you have a green quadrant, you have a yellow, you have a pink, and you have a blue. If you notice, in the center of the wheel, you have for each quadrant a categorization for the 3 archetype sets that fall into a quadrant, right? So you have, if you take the first quadrant, that's, let's start clockwise. So we start with yellow, orange. So you have leave legacy. So you have outlaw, which identifies as, free, rebellion. You have the magician, which is, surprises, power. You have the hero, which is mastery, more of in control, saving. So these 3 archetypes have been categorized as the kind of archetypes where you want to leave a legacy as a brand. Moving on to the next quadrant, so you come to 3 o'clock, you have the pink quadrant, pink to purple. So you have pursue connection. So you have belonging. You have every man. Every man is your next door neighbor. So someone you relate to, right? That is very normal, very simple. Then you have the jester, the fun loving, the humorous, enjoyment. Yeah, the clown basically. Then you have the lover, so intimacy, romantic. So these are the three different archetypes that are more related to building a connection, connecting as a person, or on an emotional level. So if that's where your brand wants to be seen, this is probably the archetypes that you may consider choosing. Then you have the third quadrant, that's provide structure. This is in blue. You have the creator on the left, which is innovation, something absolutely new, remaking standards, right? It's resetting standards. You have the ruler, in control, the leader, more of a monopolistic, I don't know if it's good, but yeah, definitely in a lot of sense, it's a great archetype to be in. You have the caregiver, which is service, nurturing. Yeah. And you have the final quadrant that's in green. You have the innocent, that is safe, purity, goodness. Yeah. And you have the sage, the all-knowing, understanding, someone who has all the answers. And you have the explorer archetype, which is freedom, trying out different new things, right? So now that you've seen the wheel firsthand, I'll just move. Yeah, okay. So you would have noticed that there are colors associated with each quadrant and with each archetype, right? It's different kinds of yellows and different kinds of pinks and blues and greens, right? Do we, when we say that I'm going to be a magician archetype, do we choose the yellow or the orange? Well, these are just indicators, or it's in a guide for your brand to take up in terms of when you get into visual design, when you decide the color palette for your brand, when you decide the iconography. What are the things that you will keep in mind, the kind of colors that you might choose? But there's no hard and fast rule that you're only supposed to follow the colors, the color wheel. Because you as a brand, because of the local culture, maybe the color red is something perceived as something negative, right? So it doesn't make sense for you to go for that, so you probably choose another color. So these are just a guideline in terms of colors that you can choose, especially when you're starting absolutely new, you have no idea what to do. This is just a dictionary that you can come back to, but it's not the set bible that you have to follow. You can actually move away from the colors that are here. The question is, are there only 12 archetypes? Really? Like, how do I squeeze in my application into this set of 12 personalities? So the answer definitely is there's almost around 60 archetypes that have been listed. I mean, we started off with 12 with Carl Jung, but over time, there are 60 and more archetypes that have been defined. But you can start with this wheel and you can build your knowledge in terms of understanding the concept of archetype, how you fall into it. And then later, if you would like to explore, you feel that your brand does not relate, your application does not relate to any of these brands, I would definitely recommend exploring those 60 options. Does that mean that you will find your answer there? No, you can actually define your brand archetype. It's the whole concept of setting your brand persona, your identity, your personality of your application. How is the application going to feel? How is the application going to talk to your users? What are the colors? What's the visual design? What kind of iconography? What kind of images are you going to use in your application? What is the color palette you're going to set? What is the experience? Is it more fun? Is it more serious? What is the experience you want your users to have? So this is a starting point to kind of define that. So let's just get into some examples and what exactly are the goals of each of these brand archetypes. So you start with the quadrant, that's leave legacy. So you have the outlaw. So outlaw is something like a rebel, someone who's against the system, someone who completely disrupts and starts something new. So some of the traits are like being rebellious, breaking rules. Examples that I could think of was definitely Netflix, right? They're a disruptor in terms of the content. Where do you, I mean, I don't remember like how many times do I go on and switch on the TV to watch a movie, right? I have to consume so much of advertising. I would prefer just, coming and watching a movie, pausing and revisiting, or starting a series and coming back. So Netflix is a great example of the Outlaw. You have PUBG. I don't think I should explain why. And definitely, if you look at, a non-online kind of an example, Harley Davidson is a great example of the Outlaw. The next, the second brand archetype, the magician, someone who makes your goals or dreams come true, someone who creates something different, something magical and special. The traits are like being impressive, charismatic, idealistic, a visionary. So I would definitely say Apple for me is a magician, right? Like they've kind of redefined your experience. The kind of experience you have using the app iPhone has actually reset the standards and has brought in a big revolution in terms of the smartphone usage, the experience, right? You have Dyson. I don't know how many of you are familiar with the brand Dyson. They have a wonderful air purifier. They have a vacuum cleaner, which is like you can reach anywhere on the ceiling and clean, and it's very portable and easy to use. You have Disney. I mean, who does not? I mean, most of us, yeah, growing up or at some point has been exposed to uh, some animation movie or something of Disney, right? It's a magical experience. If you look at the experience in terms of their amusement park, the kind of experience that they define is also the magician, right? As an archetype. You have the hero. So in Leave Legacy, this is the third brand archetype, someone who helps to improve the world, a confident, courageous, brave, strong, bold, someone who's inspirational. So you have Tesla, Tata. I really couldn't identify any applications as such that fall into this. Definitely, I would love for you to drop in the chat window if you know there's an application, an online experience that relates to the brand archetype hero. Okay, so explore spirituality. Okay. This sounds very, I'm not. So spirituality, it's not about finding a higher purpose also, but it's also in terms of being calm. So all of these three brand archetypes kind of fall into this bucket of explore spirituality. You have the innocent, someone who likes to be happy, good, pure, optimistic, simple, very ideal, having certain set of principles, following the rules, moral. So some examples are Google Chrome. Google Chrome actually is a combination of the innocent and the lover. So it's also that sometimes the brands don't fall into one brand archetype pocket. It could be two or three, but ideally, if you're able to identify as one archetype, it's great, but doesn't have to be the set rule. You have Dove, you have UNICEF, you have the Sage. Now, so Sage is, as an archetype, their goal is to help the world gain wisdom, insight, knowledge. So they're intelligent, knowledgeable, trustworthy, thoughtful, an advisor. Somewhere you go to all the answers. Yeah. So where's that? You have Google, right? You have Calm, which is a meditation application. If you've not used it, you probably you can try or read about how Calm is. I think it's paid, so definitely. But as a part of my organization, we use MS Teams, and we have, I think we have Headspace or we have Calm. So we actually have some access to it in terms of using, the content that they have there. So you have IBM, the Sage, right? Yeah. So basically, the explorer, the third archetype, and the goal is to find fulfillment, discovering new things, new experiences, someone who's adventurous, independent, pioneering, right? Leading the way, someone who's entirely like individualistic, having their own persona, setting them aside from everyone. If you open Airbnb, definitely this relates to this archetype, right? But here you would notice that the color theme does not match some of these applications or examples that I've used. So like I said, the color is not always a set guide. You can always move away from it. But Airbnb is something in terms of exploring nature and local experiences, right? So it's a great example. You have Jeep, the vehicle, the car. You have Wildcraft, you have Red Bull. The third quadrant provides structure, right? I mean, there's a lot of chaos as, if you talk about the explorer, the sage is someone who knows everything. Innocent is someone very simple and very nice. But can you be a creator? Can you be the creator archetype, creating something new that is, meaningful and which has values? Someone who's inventive, imaginative, creative, expressive, and artistic. So I relate to Instagram as, like people are creating a lot of content, right? All of us have become photographers and artists, and we are creating reels which are telling stories, right? So it's a great example of the creator. We have Photoshop, Figma. If you're a UX designer who's in love with Figma, I'm sure you know what I mean. You have Lego. Again, like kids just love playing with Lego, and it's not just kids. I love playing with Lego. You have Adobe products, and the next archetype in provide structure, the ruler. So you have the ruler, someone whose goal is to control. Is it a necessary thing? Control, yeah, but sometimes it's important to identify with a brand which can lead the way, create order, someone you can trust, right? Someone who's inspiring, who's a role model, responsible, and invokes trust in them. HDFC Bank, the mobile application or the website, Microsoft as a brand, you have LinkedIn. So these are some good examples of the ruler. Like I said, some of these brands may fall into one or two brand archetypes also, right? So you have the caregiver. What is their goal? As an archetype, they like to nurture and protect others. Someone who goes beyond, sacrificing, compassionate, empathetic, right? Maybe as UX designers, we should also be caregivers because we have to think of the users. Some great examples are Healthify Me, Arogya Setu app, WWF, WHO. Okay. I hope everyone's following because I can't see you, and we've unmuted everyone so that we can get this without interruptions. But if you have any questions, please feel free to drop in your questions in the chat window. So you have the final quadrant, which is pursue connection, right? The regular person whose goal is to belong, to connect to others. Someone who's friendly, down to earth, your everyday person, your next door neighbor, supportive, someone who is always there for you. So I feel like YouTube, Facebook, Amazon, right? Amazon is a great example, like someone you go to buy your next door grocery store kind of application where you can search for anything. You have WhatsApp, Google Pay. What I noticed is when I was coming up with examples, there were a lot of applications that I could relate to the everyman. So it is something that we all need to connect with the users, right? That's something they're more comfortable with. It's not about sometimes being extremely amazing in terms of visual design and things, but something that's easy to use and easy to understand. The jester. The goal is to spread laughter, fun, humor, little mischievous, jovial, fun loving, right? So some examples are Telegram. Have you used the sticker features? They're amazing. You have Zomato, who's very witty with, their push notifications and their advertisements. Snapchat, a lot of great filters and a lot of fun, just kind of changed the way everyone was interacting with their messenger services, right? And you have Amul with some very witty kind of advertisements and marketing, strategies or content that they create. You have the lover, so that's intimate, inspiring love, romantic, sensual, passionate, warm, intimate. Some great examples: Tinder, you have Bumble, Godiva chocolate, you have Victoria's Secret. So all of these are some great examples. Okay, but why do you really need to choose a brand archetype in UX? Come back to this question. So most of the time when we start designing, right, we are talking to the client or we are talking to our project team. If you're an agency, you're interacting with a lot of the stakeholders, even in IT services. A lot of time branding is not prioritized. It's more or less done later, and it's not part of the user experience or it's not given priority. And especially if you're a startup, you're more focused on just launching the product, and time to market is more important. So setting the brand archetype in user experience kind of completely loses its importance, and more focus is given to marketing and advertising activities. But when you start, you know, setting the design direction, setting the design language, you need to have an idea of what is the brand identity that you see for your application, for your company, which will help you set the design system, your style guide, your color palette, your component library, the tone of the language in your UX writing, every label, every content that you have on your application. Making sure it's all consistent, right? You can't have different screens and all of them having a different personality, right? It's like speaking to completely 10 different people when you're using the application. This is a different kind of tone, and then you move to another screen, it's completely different kind of tone. So this helps kind of bring a consistency, and also it helps the stakeholders, employees, and especially more importantly, designers like us, to kind of think in one direction. This is the personality that we see for our application. This is how we're going to approach. This is the tone. This is the color. This is how we want to see our users see us. So bringing consistency in the design, the tone, actually helps you connect better with your users, right? So what happens is you start out, you release your application into the market, people are using it, and then years down the lane, you were like, okay, I think the screen does not match with the onboarding experience. This particular feature feels like it's a completely different person. I don't relate to it in terms of my brand. Then you have to work a lot in terms of rebranding, in terms of, you know, this is the personality I have, but what the kind of logo and the kind of iconography and everything does not match. The tone does not match my brand personality. So you have to rework. There's a lot of cost involved. And if you actually look at proven data, when your brand identifies with one personality, one single personality or archetype, you're more likely to make money. And what are we here for, right? We are building applications to also meet the business objectives as a company. If you work, you're building for your company. If you're working with clients, you're also trying to make sure that they make benefit, they make a profit, right? They get more users to come back and find it easy to use or relatable in terms of a personality or in terms of an experience. You want to create brand loyalty, right? A lot of us would have heard about user personas. Now, someone asked me, how is it really different from user personas, right? Brand archetypes, it is an archetype, it's a personality. How is it really different? When you start off your UX design, ideally you should start off with setting the brand archetype. For this, you also need to identify who is your user category, right? My user category is from 25 to 35. That's my set user category. What do this user category want? What is the pain point? They are hungry. They don't want to cook at home. They work long hours. They want to order food. So that's the pain point. What are their aspirations? What is their spending patterns? So understanding the user category, the demography, where they are from geographically, their age, what kind of work they do, what kind of technology they use, how tech savvy they are, what are the mobile applications they regularly use. So setting this is what you call setting the user category. And from there, you can identify user personas, which could be basically a hypothetical personality of a user from that set user category, or it could be some a user persona you create from your research. So you've interviewed 80 people, and from there you've seen common traits and an emergence of a trend of your user category. These are the kind of personas that represent my user category. A lot of times the setting the user persona, it happens a little into when you start off and when you approach research, but brand archetype is something that you need to start. Now, once you set your user category, you can also come back and say, to relate to this user category, this is how I want them to see my brand. This is how they should relate to me, so that I can speak to this user category and they can relate to me as a brand personality, as an application. So basically, brand archetypes are more different from user because they represent the brand, the company, the application, and a way on how to approach your user experience, your user interface design, your visual language. And they're more like a character type or a personality type that your brand can have. But personas, basically, compared to archetypes, they both achieve two different objectives, right? Personas help understand who your customers are, what are their pain points, and archetype shows these are your customers, and but the archetype is how you want your brand to be seen by these user personas. So understanding both of this and having, setting this, what is your user category, what are the user personas, what's your brand archetype, is equally important, right? This helps actually drive what is your strategy in terms of your design plans, in terms of user experience, in terms of visual language, in terms of your offline marketing activities, your offline marketing experience. When once your users off the application and they're interacting with your brand, how do they experience this? How do you really choose your brand archetype? So understanding your the attitudes and aspirations of the users. Once you've set your user category, what their pain points are, what is it that they do not have, what is it that they want to have, what are their motivations. This is something that you can look at. So this will help understand this is my user category. So I have to be this brand personality so that my user category, my users, my audience can relate to me as a brand. The next step, look at who your competition is. Look at what their brand personas are, right? What kind of brand archetype do you think they fall in? Do you want to be just like them? Or do you want to be completely different? What is your unique selling proposition, right? Find out that this is how your competition is seen, but this is how you want to be seen. And this is what you're going to do differently. So once you set aside, what are you doing differently? What is your USP? You will actually have more clarity on how you want to be seen as a brand as compared to your competitors. Pick up the brand archetype wheel. Okay, so I'm saying start with this 12 archetypes. Remember, this is not a set standard. This is just a starting point. You can completely define your brand personality as something that is not even there as an archetype. Find out what these brand archetypes are, read about what are the personality traits. Look at words that relate to you as a brand. Identify which words, which traits of these archetypes relate to you as a brand personality that you want, so that you can connect with your audience for the user category that you've identified. Look at, maybe I want to be a certain brand. It's not a competition. They are not from my industry, but that's how I want to be seen as. So maybe as a company, as a brand, I want, as someone who's coming out with an application, I want to identify with probably I want to be seen as Spotify. That's the kind of feel and experience that I want. But I'm not into music, I'm not into content, but that's how I want to be. Where does your brand really fit in, right? So in terms of, once you've identified your unique selling proposition, once you've identified your user category, once you've looked at who your competitors are, how you want to be seen, the same as your competitors, differently. Or if there's a brand that you relate to and you want to be seen at, look at how you should talk to your audience so that they connect with you. And you might actually end up with more than one archetype from the wheel. So you can go with, like, sometimes it's very clear and it's very evident, like, okay, I am this archetype, I am the ruler, or I am the jester, I am the creator. But sometimes, like Google Chrome, you're a combination of, every man, or you're a combination of lover. So it could be a combination. Why did I decide to talk about this topic? So I was having this conversation with a friend who was working with a startup, which was no longer a startup, a very leading cab hailing service. And what happened is, when they started off, they didn't pay any attention in terms of setting their visual design, having a good logo, having a good color palette that relates to their brand, having a brand archetype. So years later, when they took off and they were no longer a startup doing really well, they decided that it's time to do a rebranding exercise. So what they did is they got an agency from outside of India, and they spent a lot of money. The agencies traveled around, talked to their stakeholders, talked to their users, and they're an aggregator of cab services, right? So they talked to the drivers. So what happened is they came back and they said, this is how your brand is, right? They started asking a lot of questions, and based on that, they put together something. But the suggestion, the new branding, the new visual design that they came up with, the company realized that if they had to change everything, it was going to be a huge cost. And huge cost in terms of changing, yes, there is a cost in changing all your designs, all your, everywhere you're there as a brand, you have to change that. But what if your customers lost that relate, how they relate to you, because you're going to change that? That was the bigger cost, and they were not convinced. So even after spending a lot of money on this, they kind of decided to not go with the rebranding suggestions, because they were worried maybe their customers would not relate to them, in terms of a brand. Some examples from everyday life applications that I use. So Google Chrome. So it's the innocent and the lover archetype. So basically, Google Chrome, like a lot of us think, yeah, technology is disruptive in terms of bringing people together, right? We don't talk to each other. We're at dinner and across each other's, looking through our phones, right? But they say no, that they actually bring a lot of people together, a sense of community and a sense of family. Another great example, Airbnb, that I absolutely love, right? So it's great to go and stay in a hotel when you're going on a holiday and, being pampered with, a big buffet and having a pool and all of that. But sometimes it's also great to actually kind of step away from that, to kind of experience what that particular place is all about in a very homely atmosphere, having that local experience. So Airbnb is a brand that connects as the explorer, right? They talk about stories of the hosts, the people who own the houses and host experiences. They have amazing destinations that are offbeat. And what, when you look at, often when I'm really bored and I need a break and I take Airbnb, I'm like wishing that I'm just waiting for my next holiday so that I can just plan something. And I've actually done a lot of, I've really used their services. And even if you're not into travel, I would definitely recommend reading about Airbnb as a case study in terms of the branding, in terms of how they speak, and try the application just to understand if you're someone who's passionate about design. Amazon, yes, my next, everything that I don't have and I want to find, I go there. So it's an everyman archetype. It's also ranked, this is data, as most loved and most valuable brand worldwide. So being an everyman can relate to a larger audience, right? It's not about having a very sophisticated kind of feel and look in terms of experience, but is it usable? Is it easy to find your product? Are my users going to come back to that? Netflix, yeah. So the Outlaw brand disrupting in terms of even the marketing, in terms of advertising. They use a lot of sarcasm in their tone, and they provided us with a product that disrupted the whole television industry, right? So it's kind of a radical freedom. I get to consume content which is from different languages. They actually, based on my viewing history and my preferences that I've listed, they actually kind of give suggestions, right, in terms of content. And I end up watching a lot of movies or series which is, I don't even know what language they are, to tell you the truth. But subtitles work for me. It's not a problem. And I do that only because Netflix has suggested to me, or I'm not going to pick up something that's not a language that I don't understand. Facebook, and every man brand, but I don't know how much of us. I'm more into Instagram now. I'm moving away from Facebook, but we have a big user group, user audience that identifies with Facebook, and we can see that in the kind of content, the posts, the way you interact with it as a. So I'm going to ask some of the volunteers here to share these as we get on. Some of this is a brilliant book. It's an expensive book. that a friend of mine has, and I borrowed and read through a bit. Archetypes in Branding. It's a toolkit for creatives and strategists by Margaret Pott Hartwell and Joshua C. Chen. This is kind of when I was learning UX and I came across this book, and I found it fascinating. And I started relating to how it is more important even for us as UX designers to set the approach in terms of branding and a personality for your brand. So these links are going to be dropped in. Some of it I don't want to flood you with a lot of information. And therefore, setting your brand archetype, besides the tone you will use in UX writing, your visual language, the user experience, it helps maintain a consistency in all of this in terms of every screen, every place your user is going to interact with you as an application. How can you maintain the consistency and not feel like someone with a multiple, personality, and it feels like, hey, is this same brand? I don't like this, payment experience. This checkout experience is completely off what they give me as a service, and aligning everyone to one vision. So you have your stakeholders, you have your customers, you have your vendors, right? It could be, if you're a cab hailing service, you have your drivers, or you have your doctors if you're a health, you're a online consulting, medical online application. So getting everyone, and especially all of us designers, developers, getting us all on board, your business analysts, your project managers, all of us on board, and connecting to one vision. This is how we're going to see our brand. This is how we're going to speak to our audience, because this is the user category we've identified. So this is how we want to relate to them, and creating an emotional connect with your users. Now, three things that I want to talk about is: one, when are you going to do this? So sometimes you could be completely starting new, right? You could be completely an application, you're starting, and you have no you don't have an offline business. You're a startup, you're starting with an application. Setting the brand archetype is so important there, right? Then you have a scenario where you are into business, you are into retail, you have a store, but now you want to move online. Is it the same experience that you want to give when someone comes to your store, or you want to give a completely different experience? If you take Federal Bank, the experience you have as a bank when you go and bank with them, and the experience if you've tried Fi, right? If you've not heard of the application, you try it. The experience and the look and feel of how it feels to use the application is completely different. So I liked how, as a bank, which is very traditional, they've tried to be a young, fun, jester kind of archetype, probably, or yes, yeah, definitely a jester. Yeah. So you have one scenario where you don't have a business, you're starting a new application. You have another scenario where you have an offline model of business and you're moving into an online. Then you have another scenario. You've been in business for a while, but now you want to be seen as a different personality because your user category over time has changed. A great example is Apple, right? Apple in the 80s was seen as the outlaw. I mean, do you see Apple as an outlaw? Yeah, they disrupted it. They brought personal computing to everyone's houses, right? They brought a smaller device as a brand, as a company. They democratized the entire way we used a computer, right? But today, we associate Apple as a magician that wows us with, bringing completely, something new. But definitely, it's something that we have to keep up with, right? There's a lot of competition now with other brands, so it's something that they have to strive at. So they're always trying to bring something that is completely not there in the market, an experience that's entirely different in the entire interface, right? So I asked myself, like, if I were to launch a website offering design services, what would my archetype be? And I told myself, yes, I'm a creator. I love drawing. I am artistic. And that's how I want to be seen as a UX designer, gesture, because I definitely believe that maybe I'm a little sarcastic, but I do have a humorous tone and the willingness to have a good laugh. Yeah. So I definitely would relate to these two archetypes. These are just my my Instagram handle and my LinkedIn. And thank you so much for listening to me. Maybe I took a little more than I planned for. I'd like to hand it over to Yash. Hi, Yash.
Hi. Uh, Thank you, Vandana, for introducing us to brand archetypes and UX. As a UX designer, I know that I have definitely learned a lot today. I believe it's important for all of us as designers to keep something like brand archetypes in mind when designing, to provide a consistent experience to our users as they interact with our brand, across channels, across platforms. Um, so let's move on to the question and answer session. So to the audience members, please feel free to unmute yourself and ask questions. And if you're feeling a bit more conscious, you can just type your questions in the chat window. So let me start off with a question I received via chat. Uh, the question is, how can you choose the archetypes as compared to the target audience? Do they need to be similar or can they be very different?
Okay, thank you, Yash. So see, you've identified your user category. Okay, you set it in terms of this is the age group. This is the kind of employment they are. They are mostly, for example, it'll be easier for me to explain. They're dual income, couples or partners, or two people, or they're a set of friends staying, and they want to order food, right? But what is the kind of experience that they're looking for? Okay, are you going to be a ruler? No, they should trust you to order food from your application. But you could be a jester because that's the age category that you're looking at. But if you're catering to an older age group, if you are a jester, the person ordering is going to look at you and give a look of cynicism. Maybe they will not relate to it, right? So in terms of an educational platform, if the user category are kids, so you're going to set an archetype which relates. Maybe it's a jester, maybe it's a caregiver, right? It could be a combination. But if the the edu platform is for a working professional, or young adults, or people out of college, then you probably want to choose something that invokes trust, right? In terms of they are at par in terms of content they're providing, and they are adding value, but they're not the same archetype if you were to cater to kids, right? In terms of the visual language, in terms of the font, you're going to have bigger fonts, you're going to have fun colors, you're going to have fun images, right? So that's so definitely it's going to differ in terms of your user category.
It's a great answer. All right. All right. Makes sense. So sometimes they don't always have to match the user's persona. Sometimes you need someone who's more authoritarian. Sometimes you need someone who's more organized, maybe more. All right. Makes sense. Again, to our audience, if anyone wants to ask a question, please feel free to unmute yourself. And if you have any questions or any doubts and anything you want to put by one. All right. Okay, here's another question received. Uh, so, what if our brand personality cannot be found in the list of brand archetypes in these 12?
Yeah. So see, sometimes we have no idea where to start, right? I mean, as a designer or as a business owner, I have no idea what kind of personality do I want. So this is just a starting point, okay? It's just a reference. This is not the set only archetype that you're going to have. And how can you just, are there only 12 kinds of people in the world? No, there are so many kinds of people. And there are so many kind of users. So you have to be a certain persona, which might not fit into this set of 12. So
Right.
actually over time, it's grown into a set of 60. It's there in the book. You have 60 personality, you have 60 archetypes, but it's not necessary you'll find your answer even there. Maybe you want to be a completely different personality. Maybe you want to be a group of three personalities, three archetypes, and set your brand personality, because there is a completely different, unique experience that you want to give to your users. So there you might want to define, right? Like you're a person, maybe I'm a motivational speaker. I have a website and I'm specifically catering to children with, who've been sexually harassed. That's particularly a user category I want to cater to. So is that, I might not find my archetype there. I might want to completely start with something different, a very empathetic, but very, very knowledgeable. So it's a combination, but there maybe I have to take a lot of things into consideration because I'm talking to children, right?
So as always with, it's very interesting what you said, that you have to start with the user in mind. So even the archetype or whatever you choose, your brand also is designed to communicate with your users in the best possible manner. Right. So if I think there's no further questions, please, audience members, if you have questions, you can even raise your hand and we can bring you up. But yes, you can please unmute yourself if you do. And if not, then we can just, we'll wrap up.
Yeah, I think I'll interrupt you here, Yash. I'd like two audience members to probably help me out here, and we can just do a quick, identifying a brand archetype for imaginary. Is there someone who wants to volunteer? Anyone? Or should I be asked? It's absolutely fine if you have no knowledge about this. I would love for you to unmute yourself and volunteer. Or you have an idea, there's an application you're working on and you want to figure out the brand archetype. Okay, everyone is very scared. Anand, I mean, I think I can call my friend. Anand, are you there? Hi, Bhavana, do you want to unmute yourself? Are you able to unmute yourself?
Yeah, can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you, Bhavana. Do you have a question or do you want to try this exercise?
I think I can try this exercise because I'm currently working on an app. I'm new to UX, but I am not I'm not new to design. I was in interior design before, so I'm working on an app. I think this is a very interesting topic. That's why I just wanted to do this exercise with you.
Okay. To make this happen, it would be really cool if we could get one more person. Do you want to come on video? Are you comfortable doing that? It's absolutely fine if you're not, but if you, I would love to, because I like people who volunteer. Is there one more person who can? Richu, I don't know. Richu's good. Richu, are you there? Are you able to? Yeah. Hi, can you unmute yourself? Yeah. Hi.
Sure.
Because a feminine name. So Richu is a UX designer. We met in an online platform, learning UI design for a bit. I'm not sure what course he was doing, but it was an edu online on Zoom kind of.
I think it's Sapta's course.
Yeah, right? Sapta's course. Yeah. Okay, so we have Bhavna here, who's our client. Okay. And Richu, you and me, we're going to ask questions to Bhavna to figure out what archetype her application is. So Bhavna, so Richu, what do you think that you would like to ask in terms of, do you want me to share that slide where I have the questions?
Yeah, sure.
Okay, so you want to ask?
Yeah.
Bhavna.
Okay, Bhavna, as a product designer, I want to know what is the personality or the company you want to start, or what the character, which character company are you looking to open?
Okay, what I would like to do, what I'm trying to do at this point in time is I am designing a fashion app for users who want to customize their product. Because when I see in the market, there's a lot of brands like Amazon, you can go and buy from those brands, but there's no personalization app. Like I want to my wedding dress, or I want to go for a particular party, right? So I am working on an app specific to that. I also understood from my users that the size and the fit, is a concern. The return is a concern. But I kind of did the interview surveys and things like that. But out of those 3-4 problems that I identified, I want to concentrate on personalization. And I want to create an app based only on personalization for people, that they can go into that app, work on it, and customize their product. It could be accessories. I want to bring fashion designers. I want to bring stylists. I want to bring bloggers, movie stars, everybody under one platform where people can buy, talk. There's an easy access. I'm sitting here in Bangalore, but somebody in Dubai is, a Dubai designer, and I can connect and I can get it done.
Okay,
Okay.
I'll add to that. Ritu, you want to ask the same question because she spoke about her user category, but
Yeah.
I'm not sure if she really spoke about what is the personality of the company. Adjectives.
Oh, okay. So personality of the company is, I want to make a fashion statement in any given space. So that's the bottom line, because the users that I interviewed, they said, if I go to a tailor, he's going to spoil my material. And I'm only thinking that, I have like 10 sets. I bought materials from different spaces, but I don't really have a tailor and things like that. So personally also I identified that, and the users that I spoke to also gave me some context about it. So adjectives are, be you, or, I want it to be, see my fit. I mean, if I am plump or thin or whatever it is, I can get my fit. That is what I'm trying to do.
Okay, Richie, you want to ask any of the other questions here?
Yeah, I think she's not targeting on a particular audience. I think anybody can custom the dress, right? Not only the wedding purpose.
Yes. So my target audience is from 18 to say 45, male and female. I want this platform to, this is how I visualize. It is going to be a B2C as well as B2B, where I can connect my fashion designers and stylists to be, and my customers, the business that this platform is going to run, and I can connect these designers to my consumers. But right now, I'm only working on B2C platform, trying to only give them that point. And I know people who customize is, the working category around say 23, 24 to say 40 years, where people are okay to spend more money to customize it and things like that. That's what we've done the research on.
Did you notice, Richu, she said something? They're okay to spend more money.
Yeah.
Right? So this is not about affordability, right?
Yeah.
So you cannot be an
only elite. I think she's having elite customers.
Yeah. So it's something like very customizable, something more luxurious, right?
Yes, but I also looked at the invert of it. So somebody who's in their 40 and 40, 45, and they have a kid who's 15, 16, will, kind of advertise this product to their parents. So maybe, that's not the generation group, or they don't know how to use the app. But I am guessing that, these the youngsters or the teenagers are going to kind of do some amount of marketing, is what the thought process at this point.
So, I mean, you want to be seen as a cool, fun, brand that kind of solves your problem in terms of, I am done going to tailors. I relate to your pain, Bhavna. I have at one point gone to 5 tailors and like, let me figure out one good tailor who's going to help me solve my problem. So, fun. Okay. Do you think, Richu, is it economical or is it more luxurious? What do you think?
I think it's luxurious.
Okay. Okay. What So we have most of the answers, right, in this first slide. Let's just move to the next slide. I think we know what the aspirations are, right? Competition. Okay, let's not. So her unique selling proposition, if you were to put it in one line, do you think, Richu, what does the company want to do? Maybe
I think it is customizable. That is the main thing. As she told that there is no other companies which is giving that option to customize the dress. Everyone is giving us ready-made dress, where she is giving the option to customize as per the customer needs. That is her USP.
Yeah.
And also the bottom line is I have an existing wardrobe at home, but I don't know how to accessorize. So styling is a very big part of it. So I worked in Bombay for about 2 years. So I've met a lot of these fashion stylists. So they would go to these, not movie stars, but per se the upper middle class who want to attend Manish Malhotra and things like that. They would style them, and you can also get products for rent. So that's how I've kind of learned how you can work with your existing wardrobe and kind of rent it, accessorize the entire look. That is also something.
Richu, okay, I'm going to ask you now. You have some understanding about what our client Bhavana wants, right? If you want to choose something from the wheel, okay, no answer is wrong, okay? If you want to choose one or two archetypes or even three, can you choose or can you suggest?
Yeah. Is the screen gone?
I am sharing. Are you able to see?
I'm not able to see. Anyway, I will open the Brand Archetype.
Okay. You have the Brand Archetype wheel.
Yeah.
Just type in.
I think there is an innovation as they are creating is customizable, right?
Yeah. Creator, yeah. I also completely agree. So creator, is that the only one or do you?
No. I think there is an exploration also, because they can wear what they wish to wear, the freedom to wear what they wish. In the other side, if we look at other brands, they are just giving what a ready-made option, where here she's having the freedom to wear.
Okay. So the archetypes are?
I think innovation, freedom.
Okay. So the archetype is the creator and the explorer for what you said.
Excellent.
Okay. So Bhavana, you have that down. But I also would love to add to this. I would say the lover. I would say intimacy. Because that's something very personal, right? In terms of how you look. Yeah. There is a connection that you want to create as a brand. So I feel like it's not every man. It's not just, I'm not trying to be funny. I'm not trying to be a caregiver. Yeah, I am trying to kind of solve your problem. I'm not a ruler. I'm not going to be serious. I don't want to I want you to trust me. I'm not going to be a sage. I'm not going to be this all-knowing person who knows your answers. I'm not going to be an innocent person. I'm not going to be a rebel, an outlaw. Not a magician. Maybe a magician. I'm not really a hero. I'm not going to, transform your life in such a way that, tomorrow yes, I can transform your life. So there I feel like creator, explorer, lover, but ultimately, Bhavana, you have to sit and understand your users, ask these questions again in a set survey structure, get what are the words that you get, and then look at it and then, understand. So, Richu, how did you feel doing this?
Exciting.
It's fun. Okay.
Yeah.
Bhavna?
Yeah, thank you for this because I had just heard the word archetype when I was going through something. I'm really thankful to this session. I really enjoyed it. I can understand it, and I'm really happy to kind of implement this.
So it's not just that you can apply this in UX or in UI, right? You can apply it for anything. If you are going to be, if you are an artist, you want to be seen by your audience. It's not like you are making money, but you have an audience, and this is how you want to see. So thank you so much, Richu, and thank you, Bhavana, for doing this.
Thanks a lot, Vandana. Thank you so much.
So I hope you're a little more convinced about why this can help us. But like I said, these are not the only archetypes maybe there is another set of archetypes that you might find useful. Is there anyone who wants to ask a question, or that's it? Okay. Yeah, okay, over to you, Yash.
Thank you so much, Vandana, for taking the time for us and bringing us this interesting session. So it was really interesting to see the brand archetyping exercise take place in real life, because we picked up a lot of subtle things that we would not, and it all brought it all together to see it take place live. And I would like to thank each and everyone who took their valuable time from a very busy day on a weekday to attend this webinar. And special thanks to all the participants, Bhavna and Richu, who participated in the exercise. And thank you to all the volunteers of the IxDF team that worked behind the scenes to make this happen. So now we have only touched upon the topic of brand archetypes in UX, because the concept of archetypes goes back 100 years, and we don't know how much more there is to study in this. Please write to us, let us know how you found the session. We are available on social media like Facebook, Twitter, LinkedIn, Instagram, and Clubhouse at IxDF Kerala. You can also write to us at idfkerala@hotmail.com. We have an exclusive IxDF Kerala community on the Interaction Design Foundation website, and we hope to see you with another webinar on UX and design. Stay safe and stay connected. Thank you.